When I first moved into that cheap apartment complex, I was excited to finally have a place of my own. I had been living with my parents for far too long, but with my new job, I had just enough money to get out and start my own life. The move was easy enough. I didn't have much, just the basics. My dad and my best friend Tony helped me haul all my stuff inside, and by that afternoon, it was just me organizing and setting up my new home. And that's when I saw him for the first time, my neighbor. I was grabbing a box from the truck when I noticed him standing outside his door, staring blankly ahead. I figured it'd be nice to introduce myself, but the second I took a step towards him, he turned and disappeared inside, slamming the door shut behind him. I thought it was strange, but I brushed it off. Not everyone is friendly, and I didn't really care as long as he kept to himself. That evening, after hours of unpacking, I decided to cook a simple dinner. As I was stirring the food, I heard a weird clicking noise. It was rhythmic, deliberate, and coming from my neighbor's apartment. I tried to ignore it, but it got louder, turning into a banging sound, like something heavy repeatedly hitting the wall. It was irritating, but I didn't want to start any problems right away, so I let it go and went to bed. The next night, I got home from work late. I grabbed a beer and sat on my small patio to unwind. That's when I heard it again. Sounds coming from my neighbor's place. This time, it wasn't just banging. It was voices. It sounded like arguing, but I couldn't make out any words. I leaned forward, trying to hear more clearly, but it was all muffled. Something about it made my stomach twist. The next day, Tony came over to check out the place and hang out. As we sat in the kitchen talking, we heard the neighbor's door slam shut. The window was open, and I saw my neighbor walk past. I stood up and watched him get into his car and drive away. Tony asked me what I was doing, and I told him about the weird noises. As we talked about it, a muffled bang echoed from the neighbor's apartment. We both turned towards the wall. Then another, a steady thudding like something or someone was trying to get attention. Then I heard it, a faint yell, barely audible but unmistakable. I asked Tony if he had heard it, but he shook his head. I strained to listen again, but it was gone. Just the soft thuds against the wall. I started to feel sick. Something wasn't right. Tony, being Tony, was way less cautious than me. He suggested we check it out. I was against it, but Tony was already at the neighbor's front door, peering through a small gap in the blinds. I reluctantly followed and listened. The banging continued. Tony tried the doorknob, but it was locked. He grinned at me like this was some kind of adventure. Then he knocked. I felt my pulse in my throat. No response. He knocked again. Still nothing. But the banging, it got louder. Then another muffled cry. This time Tony heard it too. His smirk faded. Tony looked at me and asked if I thought someone could be in trouble. I wanted to believe it was nothing, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Tony, always full of bad ideas, suggested we hop over the patio balcony to peek inside. I argued, but he insisted. If we called the cops and it turned out to be nothing, I'd look like a paranoid idiot. I hesitated, but curiosity and concern won out. We climbed over. The neighbor's patio door was unlocked. I slid it open, just enough to peek inside. The place was nearly empty. No decorations, barely any furniture. But the banging was louder in here, coming from the bedroom. Tony pushed me forward and we crept through the dark apartment. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. The noise was definitely coming from inside. We stepped closer and slowly pushed the door open. The room was almost bare, just a stained mattress on the floor, and a closet. Now I was sure the banging noise was coming from inside that closet. Tony and I exchanged a nervous glance. My hands were shaking as I reached for the closet handle. I hesitated, then yanked the door open. Inside, a woman was bound and blindfolded, her wrists and ankles tied. She flinched at the sudden light, then started sobbing when she realized we weren't the man who put her in there. I unfroze and quickly untied her. She was frantic, telling us that we had to leave now. Between her panicked breaths, she explained our neighbor had kidnapped her days ago. He had gone to school with her, asked her out, and when she rejected him, he took her. Then we heard a car engine outside. I peeked through the blinds. The neighbor was back. We had seconds to react. We helped the woman to the balcony and hurriedly climbed back over. I was the last one. Just as I swung my leg over, I saw the neighbor's front door open. We ducked inside my apartment, locking the door behind us. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. The woman grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I told her to hide in the bathroom. Then came a knock. No, not a knock. A pound. Tony and I exchanged wide-eyed looks. We knew exactly who it was. The pounding got more violent. I heard his voice through the door. He said he was looking for his girlfriend and wanted to know if we had seen her. My stomach dropped. I cracked the door open just a sliver. There he was, eyes dark, scanning my apartment behind me. My voice shook as I told him I hadn't seen anyone. He stared me down for an agonizing few seconds, then finally stepped back. He said I better not be lying to him, his voice full of both anger and nervousness. I told him I wasn't. Then, without another word, he stormed off. I watched him get into his car and speed away. Minutes later, the police arrived. The woman was taken to the hospital, and days later, the neighbor was caught and arrested. Even now, I still get chills thinking about it. I had lived next to him for less than a week and almost didn't question what I heard. I almost ignored it. But what if we hadn't checked? What if we had just gone to bed? I don't even want to think about what would have happened to that woman. Even now, I don't sleep as easily as I used to. I still get chills thinking about it. Out of all the unsettling experiences in my life, this one lingers the most. The one that still makes me double check my locks at night and hesitate when I hear an unexpected knock at my door. It happened during my junior year of college, when I moved into a single-room dorm. At first, I thought it was going to be the perfect setup. I had enjoyed having a roommate in previous years and made plenty of friends in the dorms, but I was getting serious about my studies and I needed space, quiet, no distractions. My move went smoothly, almost too smoothly. I expected something to go wrong, but everything was in place before I knew it. Then, a few days into the semester, I heard a knock at my door while I was studying. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened it, there was a girl about my age standing there. She was short, had glasses, and gave off a nerdy, overly eager vibe. She introduced herself as Emily, and she said she lived next door and just wanted to introduce herself. She smiled warmly and held out her hand. I shook it, made small talk, and then she was gone. She seemed nice, and I actually felt a little better about my move. Maybe I wouldn't be completely isolated after all. A couple of days later, after a long day of classes, I was starving and decided to walk to the dining hall. As I stepped into the hallway, I saw Emily coming out of her room at the exact same time. I said hello, and she said it back, and then asked what I was up to. When I told her I was getting food, she laughed and said she was about to do the same thing. She asked if I wanted to walk with her. I figured why not, so we went together. Dinner was surprisingly nice. Emily was majoring in engineering, and we had a decent conversation. She seemed smart, focused, someone who took school seriously, just like me. Maybe she'd be a good friend. I was starting to feel optimistic about the semester. The next morning, though, things started to feel off. As I left my room for class, Emily was already in the hallway, leaning against the wall. The moment she saw me, she jumped up, smiling brightly, and handed me a coffee. She said she knew I had a long day yesterday and wanted to surprise me. I didn't know how to react. It was a nice gesture, sure, but it was also weirdly planned. It was like she had been waiting for me. Still, I didn't want to be rude, so I thanked her. But then she insisted on walking me to class. I tried to brush her off, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. She talked the entire way there, mostly about how much fun she had with me the night before. I hoped that she would calm down once classes picked up. Maybe she was just overly friendly. Maybe she didn't have many friends. But later that evening, when I got back to my dorm, my stomach dropped. Emily was standing in front of my door, just waiting. The second she saw me, she lit up and ran over, bombarding me with questions about my day. I was exhausted and just wanted to be alone. When she asked if I wanted to go get food, I told her no, that I was too tired. She looked crushed. Then she asked if we could maybe get dinner tomorrow instead. Something in me snapped. I didn't yell, but I was firm. I told her, maybe too harshly, that I needed to be alone, that my studies came first and the whole reason I moved into a single-room dorm was for peace and quiet. As soon as I said it, I felt guilty. She had only been trying to be nice. Emily looked down for a moment, then nodded. She said she understood and walked back to her room, shutting the door behind her. That night, I lay in bed, guilt gnawing at me. Maybe she was just lonely. Maybe she had latched onto me because she thought we had something in common. I told myself I'd talk to her in the morning, set some boundaries, but in a way that didn't make her feel rejected. I never got that chance. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up suddenly. I wasn't sure why, but something felt off. The room was dark, eerily quiet. I was about to roll over and go back to sleep when a flash, blinding white light. I bolted upright, heart pounding, and saw a shadowed figure standing near my bed. My brain took a second to catch up, but then it hit me. Someone had just taken a picture of me while I was sleeping. I barely had time to react before the person turned and ran. Without thinking, I jumped out of bed and chased after them. As I reached the hallway, I saw them duck into a room, Emily's room. I followed. When I stepped inside, everything in me went cold. An entire wall, right next to Emily's bed, was covered in pictures of me. Dozens of them. Some of me walking to class, some of me sitting in lectures, some of me showering in the communal bathrooms, and the worst, multiple pictures of me sleeping. My blood turned to ice. There were hearts drawn around them, words scribbled underneath. Mine, best friends forever, love. I felt sick. I couldn't move. Emily was standing in the middle of the room, looking at me with wide, panicked eyes. She started apologizing, rambling that she could explain, that she didn't mean to scare me, that she just wanted to be close to me. I didn't say a word. I turned and walked out of her room, went into mine, and locked the door. The next morning, I went straight to the dean's office. I told them everything. They sent campus security to Emily's room. But the wall was bare. Every single picture was gone. Emily denied everything, said I was lying. She said she had no idea what I was talking about. And without proof, there wasn't much the school could do. The dean believed me, but their hands were tied. The only thing they could do was move me to a different dorm and file a restraining order against Emily. I never saw her again. I don't know what happened to her after that, and honestly, I don't want to know. But sometimes, even now, I wake up in the middle of the night feeling like I'm being watched. And I wonder, what if she never really left? What if she's still watching me? And what will she do if she ever finds me again? Moving into our first home was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of our lives. My wife and I had just gotten married, and after years of saving, we finally had a place to call our own. It wasn't a mansion, but it was perfect for us. Cozy, well-maintained, in a quiet neighborhood with friendly neighbors and tree-lined streets. The kind of place where people waved to each other from their driveways, where their kids rode their bikes in the cul-de-sac, where we could build a life together. The move itself went surprisingly smooth. We didn't have a lot, mostly furniture from our old apartment and some wedding gifts still in their boxes. We spent the first few nights unpacking, arranging, and talking about all the memories we'd make here. Late night movie marathons, holiday decorations, maybe even a nursery one day. We were just starting our future together. It was supposed to be the beginning of something beautiful. And for the first week it was, until I saw him. It was a warm evening, and my wife and I were on the back deck grilling burgers. We were laughing, sipping drinks, and just enjoying the fresh air. And that's when I noticed something in the window of the house next door. A face. But not just any face. A clown. White painted skin, bright red lips, exaggerated black eye makeup. just staring at us. I froze mid-sentence, my stomach twisting into a knot. I went to nudge my wife, but when she looked, the window was empty. She laughed, thinking I was joking. Maybe I was just seeing things. It had been a long week and my mind was probably playing tricks on me. At least that's what I told myself. A few days later, I got home late from work. My wife had already been texting me saying she was going to bed. I crept inside quietly, not wanting to wake her. As I passed our bedroom window, I saw him again. This time, there was no mistaking it. The clown was just standing in the backyard, motionless, just watching our house. A chill ran down my spine. I walked up to the window trying to get a better look, but the moment I moved, the clown turned and disappeared behind the neighbor's house. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. Should I call the police? What would I even say? Instead, I crawled into bed, but sleep didn't come easy. The next morning, over breakfast, I told my wife what I'd seen. She frowned, but shrugged it off, suggesting maybe he was just a performer or something. But later that afternoon, I got a call from her. She had seen him too. She had been in the living room when she glanced out the window and saw the clown standing inside the neighbor's house. He was staring directly at her. She told me it was starting to creep her out. I told her to ignore it for now, and when I got home, I would go over and introduce myself. Maybe he was just eccentric. Maybe he wasn't dangerous. That evening, I walked over and knocked on the neighbor's door. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. I glanced around. There was no car in the driveway, but I realized I had never actually seen a car there. Maybe it was in the garage? Something about the silence of the house unsettled me. Deciding to try again later, I went back inside. That night, as we lay in bed, my wife and I talked about the creepy neighbor. She said it wasn't normal. I agreed, but without proof of any wrongdoing, what could we do? We tried to get some sleep. I woke up to my wife's screams. I jolted upright, flipping on the lamp. She was crying hysterically. She kept saying he was here, the neighbor, the clown. She swore she woke up to find him standing over our bed, staring down at us. My blood ran cold. I jumped up and checked the house, every room, every closet. Nothing. Not a single sign that someone had been there. I went back to the bedroom and tried to calm my wife down, but inside my mind was racing. Was she imagining it? Or had he really been inside our house? If so, how? I promised her that first thing in the morning I'd confront him again. If he didn't answer, I called the police. When morning came, I went back over. This time, I pounded on the door, yelling for him to come out. Nothing. Then I saw it. A curtain shifting slightly. Someone was inside, watching me. Fury bubbled up inside me. I shouted that he needed to come out now, or I was calling the police. Silence. I turned on my heel and went straight back to the house, dialing 911. The police arrived about a half hour later. I explained everything. One officer stayed with us while the other went to check the neighbor's property. 20 minutes later, they came back with disturbing news. The house was empty. No one lived there. My stomach dropped. That couldn't be right. I had seen him. My wife had seen him. But the police found no signs of anyone living there. No furniture, no belongings, nothing. The house had been unoccupied for months. We were shaken. The police promised they'd keep an eye on the neighborhood and told us to call back if we saw anything suspicious. That night, my wife was terrified. She even talked about moving. I assured her that everything would be okay, but deep down, I wasn't so sure. I decided to stay up and watch the house. I sat by the window, staring at the dark silhouette of the house next door. Hours passed. My eyes grew heavy. And then, a soft click. My heart stopped. The sound had come from inside our house. I turned my head slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. The bedroom door was cracked open. And standing in the doorway was the clown. He was here. My breath caught in my throat. He hadn't noticed me yet. His gaze was locked onto my sleeping wife. And then I saw the knife in his hand. I had to act. Summoning every ounce of courage, I lunged at him. He barely had time to react before I tackled him to the ground. The knife clattered away as he struggled beneath me, thrashing and clawing. My wife woke up screaming, fumbling for her phone to call the police. The clown was strong, but adrenaline fueled me. I pinned him down, keeping him trapped until I heard sirens in the distance. When the police arrived, they dragged him away. The truth was even more disturbing than I could have imagined. He was homeless, sneaking into abandoned houses, but when they questioned him, he never explained why he dressed up as a clown. To this day, I don't know what his plan was. I don't want to know. All I know is that we got lucky. If I hadn't stayed up that night, if I hadn't woken up when I did, I don't think we'd be alive right now.